It's October in Florida, which means it's time to plant our strawberries. In this video, I'll talk through the unique growing season in Florida, some varieties that perform really well in Florida and where to find them, and we'll even go into the anatomy of a strawberry plant. Then I'll talk through step by step how I planted my strawberry starts in this garden tower. Let's get into it. The most important thing to understand about growing strawberries in Florida is how our season is different than the rest of the U.S. In most other states, strawberries are grown as perennials. Gardeners will plant them in spring and grow them all throughout spring, summer, and fall. Then, when the cold temperatures hit, those strawberry plants will go dormant, and those gardeners will cover them up with mulch and protect them from the frost, and then they'll come back to life in the spring next year. As an example, let's look at the temperature data for a place like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This table shows you the average high and the average low temperature across all 12 months in the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Strawberries will grow best between the temperatures of 50 and 80 degrees. Any hotter than that and the strawberry plants won't really flower. You can see from this average temperature data for Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that between May and October, the temperatures are most likely right for flowering. So in this city, the strawberry plants get planted maybe in April for flowering in May. And then they'll start to go dormant when the low temperatures are under 40, which is about November. Now, on the flip side, let's take a look at the average temperature data for my city, Melbourne, Florida. Looking at our high heat months, May through September, you can see our average temperatures are exceeding 80 degrees. This means our strawberry plants will no longer be flowering and no longer producing any fruit. But then if you look at October through April, you can see our temperatures are perfect for strawberries. So what we do here in Florida is plant our strawberries in October, and then we get fruiting all the way through April, depending on the specific variety. Now, in the northern states, they'll usually choose an ever-bearing variety of strawberries so that it'll continuously produce fruit over and over and over. But here in Florida, since we're growing our strawberries as an annual crop, we're most likely going to do our June-bearing variety of strawberries. Now, even though it's called June-bearing, if we're planting in October, it's not necessarily going to bear fruit in June. It's going to bear fruit for a short period of time and then, for the most part, be done. So within that June-bearing category, you can have early season, mid-season, and late season varieties, and even ones that produce throughout the entire season. So our early season varieties are going to be something like the Florida Brilliance one, where you have high yields in November and December, and then tapering down possibly to no fruiting at all in March and April. Other varieties like Sweet Sensation, for example, will have higher yields at the beginning of the season, but they will produce all the way through the month of April. Usually at the end of April, we're going to pull our strawberry plants and repurpose that garden space for something else. If you didn't know, Florida is the winter strawberry capital of the country, which means this state has the largest production of strawberries in the U.S. during the winter months. What some farmers do is plant multiple varieties of strawberries so that they can have a reasonable harvest throughout the entire growing season. Florida Brilliance is a variety that's been so productive for these farmers that they'll plant them and they'll get huge yields in November and December, and they'll follow it up with something else like Sensation in the later months. For us home gardeners, the same concept sounds really good in theory, but it can be a major challenge trying to find some of these bare root strawberry starts for specific varieties that UF has developed. I put together this chart that just shows 3 varieties that are commonly planted in Florida, what time of the season they usually harvest, along with a couple of sources for buying them. I ordered my Florida Brilliance variety strawberries from Whitwam Organics in about September, and I just got them in mid-October. Now, if you've ever looked through the UF IFAS information about Florida strawberry varieties, there's several more than are listed here, but I've chosen not to put them on this chart simply because I cannot find a source for a home gardener to buy them. If you have a great source for a Florida variety of strawberry, please drop a comment below and let us all know. Although it may be ideal to plant some of these Florida-specific varieties, you don't necessarily have to. Last year was my first year planting strawberries, and I didn't really know that you needed to pre-order in September or August to get your starts in the mail on time. So what I ended up doing was just going to my local nursery as soon as they got the live strawberry plants in stock, and I picked up my starts from the local nursery. Anyway, that was what I had, so I went ahead and planted it, and I still had strawberries. So don't worry, even if you pick up a variety that's not necessarily the one you wanted to grow, you can still be successful growing strawberries in Florida with one of those. Now let's take a look at a little bit of the anatomy of a strawberry plant. This is going to come in handy so you can understand how they grow. This right here is a growth point. These are new leaves that are coming out of this growth point right here. That's the main crown. And then over here, we have a secondary growth point. That's called your branch crown. There's kind of a happy medium where if you have less than 5 branch crowns, you're probably going to get really good yields for strawberries and also a really good size of strawberry. If you have too many of these branch crowns, like you planted too early in the season, you may have good yields, but your berries will be very small. Once you start getting flowers, these will turn into berries. See, this is a somewhat new flower right here. And you can see it still mostly looks like a flower. This one's been going for a few weeks, and you can see how that is actually forming into a strawberry. Give this another like 20 to 30 days and I'll have a ripe red strawberry. Now it's easy to think that you can plant this entire strawberry full of seeds and get another strawberry plant. However, that's not really how strawberry plant reproduction works best. The strawberry plants grown from these seeds will not be genetically similar to the mother plant. So the best way actually to reproduce more strawberry plants is by transplanting the runners. Strawberry plants create what are called runners. Runners are basically a daughter plant. Think of your main strawberry plant as the mother, and then it grows this long stem and creates basically another plant that is going to try to root. If you cut off the runner, you can simply transplant it and it will grow roots and it will grow more strawberries. When it comes to transplanting the runners, there's 2 things you should keep in mind to increase your odds of success. The first is let that runner stay attached to the mother plant and let it start growing roots in the soil nearby before you snip it from the mother. Once you see some root growth, you can go ahead and cut it off and then transplant that runner into its own growing space. The second thing you need to be careful about is planting depth. And the same thing is true for transplanting runners, transplanting live strawberry plants, and transplanting bare root strawberry plants. Do not plant too deep. The soil level must be right at the top of that root growth line, and the crown must be above the soil. If you plant it too deep, like I did right here, you'll notice that the strawberry plant will really just die. It won't be able to produce any new growth out of that crown, and you'll kill the plant. Now let's talk about the 2 different ways you can buy strawberry starts and then how to plant them. The first one is buying a live strawberry plant. You can buy these online, you can buy them from your local nursery or your local big box store. I think my Home Depot has them in stock right now. Last year I picked mine up from my local nursery. The second way you can buy them is a bare root strawberry start. I ordered mine from Whitwam Organics this year, their Florida Brilliance variety, and a lot of these specific varieties that you order online will be bare root strawberry starts. The thing about bare root strawberry starts is these will come and they almost look like a dead plant. The bare root strawberry starts are basically dormant strawberry plants. They were allowed to grow and then they reached a period of cold temperatures and went into dormancy, and then they were pulled out of the ground. You'll also notice if you watch other YouTube videos or you get bare root strawberry starts from different sources, you'll see a lot of them have different amounts of leaves on them. And I want to make sure you understand that the most important thing is the crown and the roots. These leaves that are already on the plant are most likely just going to die when you transplant the plant, so it really doesn't matter if you have a lot or a little. When you're nearly ready to plant your bare root strawberry starts, you're going to need to do a soak to start rehydrating those roots. Some people recommend doing it for 30 minutes to an hour, and some people recommend doing it overnight. So somewhere in that range and you'll be fine. I soaked mine overnight and I added a splash of beneficial microbes from Fox Farms Microbe Brew. I'll put a link in the description box below if you're interested in picking up that product. The purpose of the soaking is to rehydrate those roots, and the beneficial microbes are just giving it a little bit of extra boost. Now let's talk about how to prep your space for planting strawberries. Strawberries are heavy feeders. They're going to need some really nutrient-dense soil and even some fertilizer at the time of planting. Since I'm planting in the garden tower, I chose a potting soil and I went with Happy Frog potting soil. Now when it comes to adding fertilizer at the time of planting, you're gonna wanna think about the variety that you planted. Remember earlier when I talked about how we have early season, mid-season, and late season strawberries in Florida? The ones that are mid to late or producing strawberries throughout, they're gonna need a bigger boost of nitrogen at the beginning. I went with a Florida Brilliance variety, which has really high yields at the beginning and potentially nothing at the end. So I went with a balanced fertilizer that's 4-4-4. My garden tower fits about 6 cubic feet of soil, and I added the Dr. Earth balanced fertilizer at a rate of 1 cup per cubic foot of soil. So there's about 6 cups of fertilizer in that tower. If you want to learn why I chose the garden tower 2 over the green stock, watch this video right here. This will give you a full comparison of the two products so you can choose the one that's right for you. When it comes to watering strawberries, I want you to make sure that you have your watering figured out. Last year I started with live strawberry plants and I put them in a wall trough that was mounted to my fence. I thought this would be a really cool and decorative way to grow vertically in my space. However, I didn't think about how much that water was going to evaporate through that coconut liner. I did not have drip irrigation set up and I had a really hard time keeping up with the watering needs of my strawberries. So I would discourage using a container for planting strawberries that would cause excess evaporation like I did with the wall troughs and the coconut liner. The same would be true with something like a fabric bag. This year, when I filled up my garden tower with soil, I also was adding drip irrigation as I went. In the next couple days, I'll be publishing a video specifically about how I set up the drip irrigation for my strawberries in my garden tower too. If you want to check that out, click this link right here when it's available next week. If you're planting live strawberry plants, what you're going to do is just transplant them as you would any other vegetable. Just make sure you're not adding soil to the top of that soil line. Now let's talk about how to plant our bare root strawberry starts. The first thing, as I said earlier, is to soak them for 1 hour up to overnight. I would recommend adding this micro brew from Fox Farm to give your plants a little boost during the soak. There's 2 optional things you can do when you're transplanting them. One of them is trimming off the excess green growth. I would just be careful not to cut that center crown at all. But those big leaves, they're pretty much going to dry up and die anyway, so it's okay to cut them off at this point. I chose to cut the leaves off of my bare root strawberry starts because when I planted them, it just looked like I wasn't going to be able to support the plant enough, and it was looking like it was going to kind of fall out of my garden tower pocket. But that may not be an issue if you're planting in something like a raised bed. The second optional thing you can do is trim the roots. As I was planting my bare root strawberry starts, I could tell that some of the plants had roots that were maybe like this long, and some of them had roots that were only like this long. And so some of the really longer ones are probably a little excessive, and you could trim it down to like 2 or 3 inches. I chose not to do this. The only downside I see of not trimming the roots is that you'd probably have to dig a little bit deeper of a hole for transplanting to make sure you have enough room for all those roots. As I said earlier, when planting runners or live strawberry plants or bare root strawberry starts, the most important thing is planting depth. Make sure you do not bury the crown, and the soil level should be right at the point where the roots start to grow from the crown. As with any transplants, make sure you water them in. If you like this video and you want to follow along and see how big my harvest is of my Florida Brilliant strawberries between the months of November and December, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.